Welcome to the Valley of Outlaws podcast, a podcast for those looking to take the road less trodden, and a podcast for those seeking more. Should we start?
Sure.
Yeah? Okay. So, Jeremy, you are Outlaw number 29. First one of Series 5, so thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure.
And I always start every episode with the same question. So, in your own words, can you tell me who you are, what you do, and why do you do what you do? Three big questions.
Who am I? I'm Jeremy Slessor. I'm husband to Joe. I'm dad to Lorna and Jamie. And I'm the managing director at European Golf Design, which is the design company for the European Tour Group and Ryder Cup Europe. Mm-hmm. Why do you
do what you do?
I fell in love with golf early teens, and I very quickly realized that as much as I loved playing, I was never going to be good enough to make a living from it. And actually that didn't really interest me that much. But I needed a summer job when I was 14. And I got a job working on the golf course that I was playing at, which was on Wimbledon Common. And the sort of the mystery of grass, or getting grass to grow so that you could putt on it, it just sort of triggered something in my brain.
Really?
I was fascinated by it.
Wow.
So from the age of about 14, 15, I knew roughly that's what I wanted to do. I didn't quite know where it was. I certainly didn't know where it was going to end up. I didn't quite know, sort of what was going to happen. But it sort of really lit something in my head.
And at school, did you kind of know you wanted to go into? Is it what's it called? It's agronomy.
Well, greenkeeping.
Greenkeeping. Okay.
Yeah. I spent way too much time. So the summer job turned into a part-time job.
Yeah.
All through the year.
Yeah.
And I probably spent way too much time working and not enough time at college. I was at a sixth form college, so I managed to cram a 2-year A-level course into 3 years. And at the end of that, the last thing I wanted to do was go to university.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely. I was done with academia.
Yeah.
So I went traveling for a couple of years and came back and told my parents that I was going to go back and get a job on the golf course. And I think that their assumption was that this was just a sort of a placeholder until I figured out what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And to some degree, they weren't wrong. I think it probably was me figuring out, is this what I wanted to do? And in the end, yes, it was. And then I sort of figured out that I was ambitious enough and arrogant enough that I wasn't prepared to wait to fill dead men's shoes and just move up. As one person moves on, everybody moves up one level. And at that point, I did need to get an education. And there was nothing really in the UK that was available. I mean, there were agronomy degrees, but it was all agriculture. And I knew that I didn't want to do that. But I'd heard that there were courses in the US, but, how do you find out? When there's no internet, so I took a bit of a punt and I wrote to the USGA. Who else do you write to? And just so, this is me, this is what I would like to do. Can you help? And not really expected to get a response. But I was at home one night and the phone went and my mum answered the phone and she came in, she said, "That's an American guy for you." Hello. And it was a guy called Frank Hannigan, who at the time was the executive director of the USGA. And he said, I've got your letter, and I know a little bit about it, but the guy you really need to talk to is the head of our greens section, who's a guy called Bill Benjifield, and Bill's in California. I've talked to Bill today, and I've told him that I'm going to call you, and you're going to call him. So call him now.
Yeah,
here's his number. So wow, okay. So I called Bill Benjifield, who was a charming fella.
Yeah.
Well, tell me a bit more about yourself and what your experience is and what you want to do. And he said, look, here are the best 5 turf schools in the US. So apply to them, which I did. I got accepted by 5. Mm-hmm. I think mainly because out of state tuition is high, out of country tuition is even higher. So, it was like, here's a way of making a few quid off this kid. And I called Mr. Benjifield back and I said, look, I need you to be a bit subjective here. Which one do I go for?
Yeah.
And he said, if you're planning on staying in the Northern Hemisphere, go to Michigan State. If you're planning to do warm season grasses, go to Texas A&M. So at the time, I wasn't planning on doing anything outside the UK. So I went to Michigan State, had the most amazing experience there. And, you talk about motivation. The professor that was in charge of the program was a lovely, lovely guy called Dr. Payne. But he had a sign in his office which said, if you aim low in life, you might make it. And I was with him one day and he pointed at that and he said, Jerry, that's appropriate to you. Well,
that's so rude.
What kind of yeah? I mean, I think he was. I hope he was joking, but anyway, it was it was one of those things. I thought, well, no, I'll aim a bit higher than that. Yeah. But I had so I did the program, and about 8 weeks before we were due to graduate, and my plan was, I'll get my degree, I'll come back to the UK. And I'll be a greenkeeper. I'll be a course consultant. Anyway, so about 8 weeks before we're due to graduate, and I hadn't made any plans to come back, but that was sort of in my head. We, on a sort of regular basis, we were having guest speakers come in to talk to classes. And Robert Trent Jones Sr. came in and gave a lecture. Wow. And like everybody else in the class, at the end of the thing, I lined up to shake his hand and thank you very much. And he looked at it and he said, well, you're not from Michigan, are you? And I said, well, no, I'm from London. And he said, I was born in Wales and I moved to the US when I was 6. Yeah. And what are you doing? And I said, well, blah, blah, blah. And he said, well, he said, I'm taking a few students and Dr. Payne out for dinner. Would you like to join us?
Oh, wow.
And I thought, well, free meal as a student. That'll beat pizza or McDonald's or Hamburger Helper or whatever, whatever was on the menu that night. So, we went out had a very nice dinner. And at one point he said, well, what, seriously, what are you planning on doing? And I thought, well, this opportunity is never, ever, ever going to come about again. I said, well, I was planning on going back to the UK, but if you had anything, I'd love to come and work with you for a while. And he was a bit dismissive. He said, well, I'm not sure, but he said, look, he gave me a business card. He said, send your resume down to Mike Newell. If there's anything, we'll let you know. Which I did, and I didn't think anything more of it until about a month later when I got a letter saying, if you can be in Orlando on this date, which was 3 days after we were due to graduate, we've got a construction project starting. We'll give you a job for 3 months. Wow. Oh, well, perfect.
Wow.
So, headed off down to Orlando, and showed up at the site and met the site foreman, who said, "Here's the keys to your pickup. Here's the keys to your apartment. We'll see you. We'll see you at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning."
Wow!
And I thought, well, this, I've hit pay dirt here.
That is fantastic.
Anyway, so the first month on this construction job, I spent with 4 local black guys, and we had a tractor and a flatbed trailer, and we were walking up and down fairways picking up sticks and stones, and it was hot as hell and humid as hell.
Yeah.
And these guys were really nice, but none of them, they were. Well, 2 of them certainly were illiterate.
Okay.
And I can remember after about 3 weeks thinking, what have I done?
Yeah.
What have I done? This is, Jesus, if this is construction work, I'm not sure I'm cut out for this.
Yeah.
Anyway, so after a month, the project foreman said, right, he said, next week we'll get you doing some drainage work.
Mm.
Okay, fine. Mm. So I did some drainage work, then I did some finish work, then with a little bit of irrigation. And over the 6 months, I didn't do any shaping, but I did pretty much everything else. Mm-hmm. And the 3 months turned into 9 years.
Wow.
And it was the most unbelievable learning experience. The Jones organization, internationally known, but it was actually a really small company. Mm-hmm. It was probably only about 10 or 15 people in the company. In the US, there was a separate European operation. But Jones's sort of modus operandi basically was he gave you more and more responsibility until you dropped.
Yeah, wow.
And it was incredible. I learned something every single day for 9 years.
Wow. And are you the kind of person who, because there's a lot of doors opened here and opportunities, and you've gone straight through the door, like going to America, for example, some people find that very daunting, and then being told, right, 3 days after you graduate, go down to Florida. It doesn't faze you at all. If you are happy and you feel it's right, you will go and do it. Like how do you approach that?
I'm not an extrovert. Mm-hmm. Very much the opposite. Mm-hmm. When I was a kid, we had lived in the US for 3 years. Okay. So it wasn't like it was going to a place that I'd never been to before. But I think I've never really had a set, this time next year, this is what I want to do. And this time in 5 years, this is where I want to be. I've always, I don't doubt that there is validity to that as a sort of life philosophy, but I've always been more reactive to, if there's an opportunity, okay, let's do that for a bit and see what happens. Yeah. I've been very lucky in that what's happened has generally been quite good. I'm a strong believer that you make your own luck.
Yes.
But you've got to have some luck to begin with. If
you've got to be able to see it as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. But if Frank Hannigan hadn't responded, the whole thing's done. So very grateful to him. Very grateful to Bill Benjafield for sort of following up. Very grateful to Dr. Payne at Michigan State for saying, okay, you can come along. Very grateful to Mr. Jones for asking me to dinner. And then offering me a job, and then saying, well, you can do more than just walk up and down behind a tractor all day. You can do this, and okay, well, you can do that. So, I think there's real value in being flexible enough that when something comes up, you're able to just go, okay, let's do that.
Yeah. No, I agree. At what point in this period of life did you start to maybe build a vision for what you could or become, or was there nothing at all where you went, I could then get into golf course design as you're doing?
No, because
or little stages of visions at least.
Well, so over the course of the 9 years that I was with them, I went from being the lowest kid on the totem pole to eventually running jobs. And then we had a European operation that was obviously in a bit of financial trouble. And to this day, I think for no other reason than, quote, I was the European in the company. I got a call one day from Mr. Jones saying, I need you to go to Europe and try and understand what's happening over in Europe because they keep asking for money. So I spent a month touring around the project. He had 11 contracts under construction. So Jones was structured slightly different from a lot of the other design groups in that he did design build. And he had 11 contracts in Europe to design and build courses. And after the month, I went back to the office in Florida, and we're sort of about 5 or 6 people in the room, and they, what did you find? And I said, well, I think you've got some problems. I think you've got 11 projects, but you might make money on one of them because the other 10 are so badly structured. Well, what's the worst? What's the worst case? I said, well, worst case is you're going to lose many millions, and then the sort of the conversation was, okay, well, strategically, what do we do? Do we just, in effect, throw a thermonuclear device in and walk away, or do we finish these things out? And to his immense credit, Jones, who at the time would have been about 80, said, I have not built my career to crash it now.
Yeah.
So we're going to honor all those contracts. We'll finish them all out. But Jeremy, do not make me lose millions.
Yeah.
So it was like, well, I guess I'm going back to Europe then. Yes, you are. And there were a lot of good people in that organization. And collectively, we got everything done. He lost some money, but he didn't lose as much as we had thought he was going to lose. And then the sort of decision was, okay, well, we're not interested in Europe anymore, so we'll move everybody back. That wants to go back to the US, we'll move them all back to the US. So that happened about 1990.
Okay.
And then I was sort of back into building courses for him. And then I was running a job up in north of Boston, and we got shut down for the winter. And the next thing was, so Jones owned a club in Fort Lauderdale in Florida, and I'm sort of, okay, well, when the construction's over, you go down to Florida, spend the winter in Florida, working on the golf course. Yeah. Happy days. Yeah. Go to the beach. Yeah. Go, whatever. And I was getting packed up to move down from Boston, and I got a call from one of the guys in the design office, which was in New Jersey.
Yes.
Saying, Jeremy, can you draw?
Yeah.
Of course I can draw. I've been drawing since I was 2.
Yeah.
What a stupid question. Well, don't go to Florida. Come to New Jersey. One of the draftsmen's just quit.
Oh, wow.
Oh, really? New Jersey in the winter? Really? Anyway, so I showed up at the office. Within about 5 minutes, they realized I couldn't draw worth anything. So they spent the winter teaching me how to draw. Wow. Went back and finished that next summer. Went back and finished the job in Boston. At the end of which they said, well, now that we've taught you how to draw, come back, you're going to be based in the office from that point. And it was sort of when I was there that everything really sort of materialized.
Interesting. And I guess the on-course kind of stuff and the delivery of the projects gives you a great insight as well into how to design as well. Does that kind of give you a different perspective to other people?
So, we get a lot of inquiries from people who, and this being a bit generalist, but and probably a little bit unkind, but most of them are, I love golf, and I think I'd be a great designer. So give me a job. Yeah. And you go, well, what experience have you got? Well, I play a lot of golf, and I played a lot of golf courses, and I know what a good golf course is, and I know what a bad. Well, okay, but what experience have you? Yeah. Well, I've played a lot of golf, and I've played a lot of great golf courses. So, but can you draw? Can you draw? Can you represent your ideas on a piece of paper? Yeah. Well, I played a lot of golf. So my advice to these guys almost invariably is, look, either get the graphical ability, so go and do a landscape architecture course, or do something that shows that you can draw, put your ideas onto a piece of paper, because in the end, that's what the business is about. You can't put it on paper. There are very few jobs, very few projects that are going to be given, especially now, to people who say to a client, it's all up here. Oh, yeah. Trust me. It's just, Pete Dye did that for most of his career, and that was genius. Yeah. But the way things are these days, it's going to be a tough sell. Yeah. So get some experience in terms of being able to graphically put down on paper, or and I'm biased because this is where how I got into the business. Go and work on a golf course. Learn how to maintain a golf course, and then go and learn how to build a golf course. And if you've got, if you're prepared to put 3, 4, 5 years into an academic background, put 3, 4, 5 years into a practical background. Yeah. And I guarantee you will pick up as much, if not more, knowledge of how to design by maintaining and building a course, as you will in any design studio or any architectural course anywhere in the world. So, if you can build something, I think pretty much you've got a good background on how to design something.
Do you think it's easier now to design with technological advancements of computers and that kind of CAD stuff, or was it easier when you were? I presume it was still pencil and paper when you first started out, and
CAD was just getting going.
Okay.
We bought. At Jones, we bought our first CAD package in about 89, 90. Yeah. Is it easier? No.
Speed-wise, or?
No, because the process hasn't really changed that much. We still everything that comes out of the office starts on a piece of paper. Yeah. Once it's on the paper, then it gets digitized. But maybe it's just because we're all of a certain age, but nobody in the office designs straight onto CAD. What CAD has done is allow the transfer of information much easier. The days of printing a plan, putting it into a FedEx tube, FedExing it down overnight to somewhere so that they could look and, so engineers could look at it and then scribble and send it back. That's done in an instant. Yeah. So the transfer and the sharing of information has been transformed. The process, again, maybe that's just because we're of a certain age. The process hasn't changed a bit.
I'm a big believer, actually, that you're far more capable of being more creative when you draw manually first with your hand rather than on computer. Studying architecture, it was exactly the same thing. I remember a lot of people would go in to do 3D models first. And when you start with a 3D model, you don't fully, I don't think, actually understand what you want to create. You're kind of just going, well, this looks like a good model. Whereas if you start by hand and sketching and have conceptual stuff and really building up the ideas in your mind, you then have a lot stronger kind of ideas of what the direction you want to go in. And
I think it gives you a bigger picture.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how big your monitor is.
Yeah.
It's limited.
Yeah.
Whereas an A0 piece of paper, or you know, I mean, we printed on bigger than A0, so it just gives you a much bigger view of the overall thing. Because you know, golf is 18 holes, but they're 18 connected holes.
Yeah.
And with the best will in the world, you know, designing a hole on a monitor, you only really see that hole. You're not, you know, you don't have the sort of, it's not in the context of everything else. So I think it, I mean, you know, again, this could be an age thing, generational thing, but it does seem to me that the best way of doing it is with a pencil.
Sure. And how much also having a balance of being on the site and understanding the site to kind of see stuff? Because a question I have for you was, how do you view a golf course differently to how a player views a golf course as a designer? What features and stuff in the landscapes do you pick out which you think the untrained eye just doesn't see?
I've told this story before, but very early in my career, I was doing a project and the client explained to me his 90-50 rule. And I looked at him a bit blankly and what do you mean by that? And he said, 90% of perfection costs 50%.
Okay.
The 10% to get to 90 to 100%. So perfection doubles the cost. He says, I'm not interested in that. He says, you give me 90%, I'm a happy man.
Interesting.
And I thought, you know, for a guy sort of relatively new in the business and full of ideals, that I thought, what a bizarre thing to say. Why would you not be aiming for as good as you can get? The more time I've spent in this job, that was genius. Really? Absolute genius. Because he then went on and said, look, he said, the only people that will know the difference between 90 and 100, he says, is you and all your golf geek mates. He said, you're not my client.
Interesting.
And I think the lesson I drew from that is you listen to the client, understand what their motivation is and what their objectives are, and you design to that objective. It's not, they're not hiring us to do what we want. They're hiring us to achieve a business objective. And if you don't listen first, before you start drawing, it won't end up in a good place.
It's so similar to architecture because I think a lot of people would agree, there's a real big ego problem in the design space. And I think that a lot of people have these preconceived ideas. This is what I want to create for the world kind of thing. And as you said, they don't listen to what the client says, to actually what's needed on site, actually the demands and the kind of expectations. And you just get carried away doing something, and then actually you deliver a lot less because you're not satisfying to the needs. And it's fascinating because it clearly goes across the design thing of actually pulling yourself out of the picture and just objectively listening to what someone wants. Is the simplest way to move forward.
The best tools you have as a designer are these. It's just listen to what the guy wants. If you listen and you deliver, you'll have a pretty happy client. If you don't listen and don't deliver, bad news. If you listen and don't deliver, bad news. But if you listen, really listen to what they want and what why are you doing this project? What do you? because it's a big commitment in time and money. So are you doing this for business reasons? I mean, some, not many, but some clients are doing it purely, they are doing it for ego. And then it's a case of, okay, well, how much of our ego can we put into this thing?
Sure.
But most of the clients we're working for have got very specific business objectives. So what we need to do is help achieve them. You don't achieve them by not listening.
Sure. Are there certain design principles as well you have to follow in terms of your process to like design a good course? Or is it kind of, as you said, you listen and then it's reactive? There's no kind of set principles in terms of layout of holes or the way it flows through, or is that really reactive to the site?
Well, I mean, there are certain sort of accepted norms, like, ideally for operational reasons, we should have a couple of loops of 9 holes. I mean, people have been talking about loops of 6, 6, and 6 as being the ideal. That's never struck me as being particularly bright. If you're going to, if you've got the space to get
6, 6, and 6
3 loops in, it seems to me a much better setup is to have a loop of 3 and a loop of 6 and a loop of 9.
Interesting.
Because then you can play 3 holes, you can play 6 holes, you can play 9 holes, you can play 12, you can play 15, you can play 18 holes.
Interesting.
But it takes a lot of land around the clubhouse to get 3 loops in and out. I think the overriding starting point is, what does the land suggest? It's no good going in with preconceived ideas about what you're going to do if the land fundamentally is not going to let you do that. Or in order to achieve those preconceived ideas, you've got to take away the thing that is attractive about that parcel of land in the first place. And I think that, that's been done too often.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Has technology and like advancements in golf equipment also changed the way you focus? Obviously, course length obviously has to, especially for professionals, you have to increce it a lot more. Is it a lot more challenging, or is it just
takes more,
bigger land?
It just takes more land.
Yeah.
I mean, when I started with Trent Jones in the mid '80s, he was putting fairway bunkers in at 230 yards, 240 yards. We're putting him in at 300 to 330 now. Yeah. And that's in 35, 40 years. Well, coming up to 40 years. So, the technology's changed massively. Yeah. But, it's changed the pro game, but it's actually changed the amateur game, particularly where, with us, most of the work that we do is not just golf. It's golf with real estate or hotel or a combination of, multiple different uses. Yeah. What has changed is the width of the corridor that you need. Okay. Length for the pros is almost, there isn't a length at which they're challenged now. Okay. If you look back at the US Open at Erin Hills, it was, they played it just short 8,000 yards. So length, not really an issue. For amateurs, we all like to hit it further, but coupled with the ability to hit it further is the ability to hit it wider when we don't hit it correctly. Yeah. So the corridor has just become wider. Interesting. And that takes more land. Yeah. And in order to justify the additional land, you have to have additional real estate. So the whole project just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah. So that, more than anything, the change in technology from a playing perspective has, it's increased the length if a client is thinking, well, I might wish to hold a pro tournament in future, but what it's actually done is increase the width of everything. And that just eats up more and more land. With more and more land, you're using more resources, more water, more people, So it just becomes exponentially more expensive to build it and then maintain it. And at some point, the whole sort of sustainability
Plays
curve
into it.
starts to not look very good.
No, fair. And I mean, how long do you think it will keep? Do you think there's a limit to the I guess the advances in technology where you guys will push? You'll say, actually, we can't expand, take any more land. We'll go back the other way. Is there kind of a limit to it, and it goes back and says, actually, we'll make it more challenging in terms of difficulty to hit fairways? Or
I think, I'm not sure that I'm the right guy. I think the guys to answer that are at the USGA and at the RNA.
Yeah,
they're trying.
Yeah.
Whether the 15% rollback is going to be enough, I don't think so. Whether something should have been done 20, 30, 40 years ago, well, that horse has bolted.
Yeah.
And I think if, you could have, over the last 100, 150 years, at any point, somebody probably would have said, enough's enough. When the feathery was replaced by a gutta percha ball, or by at any point there would have been people saying it's gone too far.
Sure.
So it's just
it's another phase.
It's just human nature as it is to innovate and improve, and that will keep going.
Yeah.
I think par as the holy grail is probably not really the it's not as important. I mean, is it important? Not really.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. Passion. How important is it for you to be passionate about what you do?
I think passion is a very overused word.
Okay.
Everybody has a passion.
Do you
I am passionate about you. You don't get a CV without a cover letter which says, I am passionate about this. Show me. Don't tell me. Show me that you're passionate. So am I passionate about my job? No. I love my job. I love going to work every day. And I love going home every night. I mean, I am amazingly lucky.
Yeah.
But am I passionate about it? It's a word that it's lost all its meaning, I think, because so many people use it every single day about everything.
No, it's fair enough, because I actually think you're right. I think it's almost like a buzzword people say to try and get someone to convince you that they're interested.
Passionate. No, you're not, because you're not doing. If you're passionate about something, you do it. You would do it for nothing.
Yes, and okay, this is interesting. So I had a few people I speak to go, and they go, I don't know what to do with my work or my career, And we always talk about it, and I say to them, okay, if you chose to do something without being paid for the rest of your life, what would you do? It's the simplest starting point for that. And I think that's something a lot of people don't understand is like, what's your vocational hobby which you want to do till you die? Like the Japanese saying the ikigai, like you do something which serves you all your life, basically. And I think that is the truest sense of what passion should be, but people don't fully understand that.
Yeah. If you are passionate about design, whether it's golf or architecture or clothes or whatever, that's what you do in your spare time. Yeah. So when you go for a job, you'd have a portfolio of work that you've done in your own time, and it might not be very professionally presented, but you've got a portfolio. You've got something to show an employer. I've had these ideas, and I've spent time developing ideas. But the number, again, going back, and again, it's a generalization, and it may be unkind to a few of the people that have walked in the door. But the number of people that have come and said, "I'd love to be a designer. Well, show me something that you've done." Well, I haven't had the opportunity.
Yeah.
Bullshit.
Yeah. Well, you've got your own sketchbooks at home. You can do it. No, I agree. Completely agree. What's the hardest part of your job? And do you think it's people management or is it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And look, and having said that, the guys that I work with are the easiest people ever. They're all amazingly good at what they do.
Yeah.
They love what they do. And so the challenge of people management with them is easy. Yeah. The challenge of people management is when things don't go well and you have to break the relationship, and that's hard. I mean, it's hard for the breaker.
Yeah,
it's twice as hard for the breakee.
Yeah,
and the 4 worst days of my professional life have been when I've had to have that conversation, and it's horrible. But yeah, I mean, I can remember my dad once telling me that his job, he was a producer with the BBC, and I can remember him once telling me his job would be easy if it wasn't for the bloody people. And I'm lucky because the bloody people that I work with every day are crazy good at what they do.
I'm a big believer in this. There's a thing which says you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Yeah,
I really believe in that, and who you surround yourself with, and what they believe in, the way they think. You'll just become the 6th version of that. I really believe in that. I think it's such a strong motto.
Yeah.
How do you rejuvenate yourself? How do you find space to come back with energy and creativity? We've just come back from Christmas. How do you do that?
Well, as I say, I'm very lucky. I have a wife that I adore. So spending time at home, the kids are all grown up and they've gone off and they're doing their own thing, but they do sort of come back from time to time, and so family time is important. And one of the downsides of both upsides and downsides of the job is the travel.
Yeah.
So I've missed a lot of time at home. And Joe has been very gracious and always has, sort of understood that this is part of the job. And she's never, ever complained about it. But I wasn't always at home. Well, certainly wasn't at home every night. So I missed some of the kids growing up.
Yeah,
but they're good kids, and she did an amazing job with them. But how do I reduce? So spending time at home. I used to run.
Okay.
But the knees have gone. But running was a great sort of cleanser of the mind.
Yeah. I get that with swimming.
Yeah. I think. Yeah. So where the sort of outside of the home, the 2 things that I enjoy, that I find myself just totally focused on what I'm doing, is kayaking and fly fishing.
Oh, wow.
Which I've picked up in the last few years, and it's just utterly absorbing.
Okay, so how did you get into those? Were they just things you wanted to try? And
so kayaking, I did as a kid.
Okay.
With the Scouts.
Yeah.
And always thought that was really good fun. And then when we moved back to the UK, and moved back to where we are now, I thought, well, why not? And so I found an old kayak on eBay and
nice,
and they've traded that up a few times. I've got quite a nice kayak now. But we did, that's
fantastic,
glorious. And then fly fishing is.
People are obsessed with it. Like
it's amazing.
Is it?
It is.
Where do you go for that?
So I started off. There's some fisheries down outside Guildford.
Okay.
but I've joined a club. It's down in Sussex. We've got some still waters, and then we've got access to some of the chalk streams in Hampshire.
That's fantastic.
It's absolutely
brilliant.
It's glorious.
How important do you think it is? Okay, let's say people bring like trying to apply for a job or coming to you and asking for advice. How important do you think it is for them to have external hobbies outside of their work and having this kind of balance to working, playing,
Well, regardless of whether it's important for the business, it's important as a human being.
Yeah.
I mean, the single-minded. I mean, designing can be a very isolating process. It can be pretty all-consuming. Not being able to turn off is a big mistake. I think that's a big mistake.
100%.
I think you've got to have something. I don't know. I mean, I don't care what it is, but you've got to have something that you can sort of, at the end of a day or, over a weekend or, whatever the time period is, that you can just sort of switch off and not think about what it is that you're working on. So, yeah, I think, if and when we're looking to fill a position, which is not very often, but it's certainly not the first, second or third thing that we're looking at candidates to, sort of in terms of their sort of potential to join us. But it would be, it would be a question as to, well, okay, I guess you play golf. Yes. Okay. Well, other than that, what do you do? What makes you happy?
I personally like starting a drinks company at the moment and thinking about when I want to employ people and stuff like that with it. It's something which I think I want to have in the people around me, is that they have something additional to come back and talk about, and that's excited them just to bring energy back in. I think sometimes I've been in places and offices where it's been, there's no energy. There's just, I'm coming to do my 9 to 5. I haven't really got anything else to add to it. I don't really want to be here. I want to go home, go to sleep, and come back and
I think part of that is the work environment.
Yeah.
We don't have EGD is I went to a school where you had to wear a tie, you had to wear a jacket from the age of 11, and I hated it. And I can't now sort of recall whether it was a conscious decision or a subconscious decision, but I kind of knew that I wanted to, whatever I was going to do for a career, I didn't want to wear a suit and a tie.
Yeah.
So, EGD's a pretty relaxed work environment, partly because that's who I am. Yeah. That's who everybody else in the office is. Yeah. Partly because we spend an awful lot of time there, and it just seems counterproductive to have a rigorous dress code. I mean,
yes.
One of the problems with golf is the dress code.
Yeah.
But different sort of conversation.
There's a whole episode on that on its own,
but part of it was, I sort of consciously made a decision, well, if this is somewhere where we are going to spend a lot of time, it needs to be somewhere that we enjoy spending a lot of time in. Yeah. And we're lucky, we're a very small team. Everybody loves what they do. Yeah. So we don't have 500, we're not a group of 500 people, of which invariably there are going to be a few people who, for whatever reason, don't want to be there. Therefore, their energy is not good. They're not very, far from being positive, they're normally quite negative. We just don't have that problem. But I think, for bigger organizations, having some kind of positive flow is very difficult to maintain. Yeah. And keep going. And that in the end, it has to come from the top. Yeah. It's not going to it's not going to filter up from the bottom.
Yeah.
You have to treat. I think, and these are not unique, or they are not the product of my brain. But I think to be a good manager, to be a good leader, you need three things. You need integrity.
Mm-hmm.
People have to know that what you say you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have empathy, because if you can't understand the other person's point of view, it's very difficult. I mean, that's dictatorial.
Yeah,
it's my opinion, my view. This is what you're going to do.
Yeah.
I think the third thing you need every now and then is you need some courage.
Yeah,
because every now and then there are some difficult decisions to make. And if you're just a bit wishy-washy, then
no one has any idea of the direction, I guess, in that sense, do they? If you're not brave enough to kind of set the path and take the risky route and say we're going this way. Yeah, I understand that.
But I think, as I say, I think integrity and empathy are the two big ones.
Yeah, no, true.
For me.
No, I agree. Before we go on to more, I guess, mindset stuff, I guess I can't not have you here and ask you about designing courses for the Ryder Cup and stuff like that, and the responsibilities and how you guys as an office approach that. Like, how is that? Is that any different to approaching any other course? Because obviously you've got a global audience on a golf course for a week period of time. Is there higher expectations for delivery or?
Yes.
Yeah. I would have thought so.
Yeah. I mean, that said, I don't think we put any more time into it than we would any other project.
Okay.
But there are more factors involved than there will be on a typical project.
Yeah.
The ability to get 6,000 to 10,000 people in a stand around the first tee requires space.
Yes.
So that needs to be thought about. The ability for the hospitality units to seat 12,000 people takes space.
Mm-hmm.
The ability to move 50 to 60,000 people around a golf course where for 2 of the 3 days of play, there's only ever 4 matches on the golf course at any one time. And how do you give them an experience that they will enjoy when the ability to watch is really pretty limited? That takes time.
Yeah.
Having the space for the tented village and the media center and security and administration and bus terminals and blah 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 blah. The list just goes on and on and on. That takes time, but the effort isn't any different.
Is there any thought going towards, I guess, the audience who watches on television? Okay, I know everybody watches the Masters and we go, amen corner. We've got 3 holes. Like, when you're designing that, do you guys go, oh, this would be a really nice corner for a more focus, and we'll have this as like 3 holes coming into here? Or is there any influence in the way you design that?
There's starting to be a bit of a theme towards building, sort of particularly on the back 9 holes, building up to a sort of crescendo on 15, 16, 17 and 18, although the number of games that actually go to the 18th is relatively small.
Yeah.
But there's no point in not having, a really heroic 18th. And the reality is, the Ryder Cup, unless the circumstances are completely, bizarre, or I was going to say unprecedented, but then the belfry comes up. The chances of a course hosting the Ryder Cup more than once is pretty slim.
Yeah.
So it's got to be, it's got to be playable. It's got to be enjoyable. It's got to be, viable.
Yeah.
For the rest of its lifetime. Existence.
Yeah.
So there's no point in just saying, well, we are designing for 1 week in September in 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years' time. That would be utterly pointless.
Yeah.
But, that having been said, if if there is the potential for it to be hosting a Ryder Cup in 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years' time, you have to start thinking about, okay, well, there are some logistical realities that we have to allow for today in order for that to be capable of hosting in the future.
Yeah. I was thinking while you say that as well, I was just playing through the last Ryder Cup and I think it was at 16 and 17, the drivable par 4 of Tommy Fleetwood hit a shot, and then Rory's chip on 17 up to the par 3. I guess it's the players who make the holes memorable as well to the fans when they play it, rather than you as a designer plan it. Well, we planned that hole to be like that. We planned it. Or is there a balance to it? Okay.
Well, of course we planned. Of course we planned the 16th to be. I mean, all joking aside, it was. It was designed to be. Dave Sampson in the office did an amazing job on that. It was designed to be a drivable 4. As the 16th hole for a Ryder Cup. And it did its job.
It did. For Team Europe.
It did its job pretty spectacularly.
It did. What do you think, also, just before I go on the other one, what do you think about, I think it's the TGL, this indoor simulated golf thing that started last night, and the players are playing on a massive screen in a venue, and they've got sound bunkers and greens. How does that affect you as a golf course designer? And are you not threatened by it at all? You think it's an evolution of the sport?
No, I'm not threatened. No, I don't. No, I mean that would be like saying, well, do you think sort of the Sims are threatening the game? I don't at all.
Okay,
not at all.
Do you not? Okay,
no. I think the more people that get exposed to golf, the better.
Yeah,
you can't play. In Northern Europe, you can't play golf on a golf course in the wintertime.
Yeah.
So if you want to play
Sims,
give people the alternative. I mean, a lot of people in the industry refer to sim players, range players as plastic golfers.
Okay.
No, they're golfers.
Yeah.
They're just choosing to do it in a different forum. But they're no less golfers.
Agreed. I don't think that. I think what I was trying to get to the point was more that I think people are notoriously lazy, and people getting into the sport, or if they see on TV these kind of simulated things, that is the extent of what they think golf will be. But for me, going out and playing it, golf is half as much as playing on a course as it is being outside, walking 18 holes, having a conversation with someone. That's what golf is. And it's just a fear of the essence of what golf as we know it to be before these technological advancements.
But I mean, what we know as golf, I mean, I'm assuming by what you've said, and I don't think I'm wrong, but I'm assuming that your idea of the perfect round of golf is you've got 3 people that you thoroughly enjoy their company, you're carrying your bag, it's a nice day, and you're in a nice, beautiful environment. But your experience and your perfect day will be different from somebody whose perfect day is, I want to ride a golf cart.
Okay.
Or I want a caddy. Or I want to, I'm not really, I don't want to walk. I don't want to ride anymore. I'm just going to hit balls into a screen. It's, that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Yeah. The perfect golf experience is going to be different for many, many people. But it's all golf.
No, fair, very valid point, and fair enough. So completely subjective.
TGL, I don't know. I think as a design exercise, it's fascinating.
Agreed. Yeah.
Because all of a sudden, you're not in 3D. You're in 4. I mean, there are no physical limits. So, I mean, I suppose, if anything, I haven't seen many of the holes that have been designed. But I suppose, in a way, if I was being critical. It's that maybe they haven't let go of the physical reality that isn't there.
Yeah.
This is a digital space.
Interesting.
You can do whatever you want to do.
Interesting. That's a very interesting intent, actually. Like, a viewpoint on that. Yeah. Okay.
It doesn't have to replicate.
Yeah. Doesn't have to be
golf
golf as we
course.
know it. Yeah.
Could be anything.
Yeah. Well, you think about all these kind of games, the little golf Wii games and stuff, and they have in space and stuff like that, and just completely different locations.
Yeah.
Like,
well, you'll be old enough to remember those crazy calendars that used to come out every year with these impossible golf holes.
Yeah.
I can't remember the artist's name, but he used to design, sort of playing from the tip of Mount Everest to the base camp.
Yeah. That's a very interesting.
There's that's only beginning to tip.
Yeah.
To look at the tip of that iceberg.
Yeah.
You can do anything. It's a digital space.
Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah. Fascinating.
But it seemed, like the holes that I've seen, you could build.
Yeah.
So have you gone as far as you can go? I don't think they have.
No,
yet.
fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. Okay. More the mindset stuff. What's the biggest self-limiting belief you had to overcome?
Shyness.
Interesting.
I was terribly shy.
Really?
Yeah. No, I've really struggled with that over the years. I think as you get older, it goes, or it certainly diminishes. But I was cripplingly shy as a kid. So that's. I think shyness sort of manifests itself in a lack of self-confidence. And every now and then I do find myself thinking, well, shouldn't, and you go, no, hold on a minute. No, come on. What's the worst that could happen? I think that's, as a philosophy, what's the worst that can happen? It's not a bad place to start from. Because, and when you really analyze it, doesn't matter the worst is usually not too bad. Yeah. The upside is usually pretty significant. Yeah. So
did you ever suffer from a fear of failure, which stopped you from doing things? Or, I mean, saying that from your stories early on, I don't think so, but you might argue differently.
I was constantly of the view that I'd reached my level, and it was all these other people that said, no, you can do more.
Interesting.
I sort of, Jones was a great, he was a mentor of sorts. There were other people that, in that group that I really respected and constantly said, you can do more than that. There was one guy there, and he sort of called me into his office one day, and he said, Jeremy, he said, look, he says, you're never going to be the best at anything. Oh, that's hard. He said, but you can be the second best at a ton of stuff. He said, and that is a really strong position to be in. He said, you're a generalist. He said, he said, don't go down the hole of getting into one thing. So he said, yeah, you can do construction. Yes, you can do a bit of design. Yes, you can do project management. Yes, you can do a bit of the financy stuff. He said, that's your strength. But he said, you're never going to be the best designer in the world. You're never going to be the best project manager in the world. You're definitely not going to be the best financial guy. So don't go down those paths.
How long did it take for you to understand that? Like, saying that back now, you probably can understand it a lot clearer than when.
No. It was no. That was like, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You're right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Brilliant. Okay. Final 3 questions. What do you think the keys are to succeeding and following your dreams?
Keeping going. Persistence. Everybody will have knockbacks. I mean, you know, that's just the way life is. The ability to keep going is what makes the difference.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of saying in the end, well, what's the worst that can happen? You know, I bugger that. I'm not going to let that beat me.
Mm-hmm.
That's, I think persistence is absolutely the key.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love that. What advice would you give to people who want to get into golf course design, golf space, agronomy, greenkeeping, or other kind of design spaces? What advice would you give them to make those first initial steps? I know we talked a little bit about it earlier, showing passion and doing things on your own, but
I think, what advice would I give? Number one, do it, because it is the most amazing business. The golf industry is extraordinary. I've got so many friends in the industry, and I've had so many unbelievable experiences. So if that's what you really, really want to do it. Show me, show everybody that's what you want to do. Yeah, I mean, the advice is get as much experience as you can, get as wide an experience as you can, and eventually, unlike me, you'll probably find something that really does excite you, and then follow it. As I say, I when Alan told me you're a generalist, it was another light bulb moment. I really thought, bugger me, you're right.
You've had this conversation has been so interesting because there's clearly been some really great figures in your career who have given you some great direction and feedback and thoughts
without always necessarily the best of intentions. I think, a couple of them were like, what do you think? Like, this is, you've reached you're never going to get higher than that level. And that was sort of motivation. But I've been really lucky. I've had some amazing people that I've worked with and for who've always just sort of given me a bit of a prod. And I'm very grateful and very fortunate.
No, it's fascinating. Okay, last question. I know your kids are already grown up, but what was the one lesson you wanted to teach them when growing up? Or maybe I can rephrase it. When they have grandkids, what's the one lesson you'd want to teach your grandkids about life and happiness?
I'll find something that you love and do it. That we all know too many people that hate what they do 5 days out of every 7. And I can't imagine waking up on a Monday morning and thinking, oh God, I've got to go, or worse, going to bed on a Sunday night thinking, oh Christ, I've got to wake up tomorrow and go and do that thing. So they are both doing something that they really enjoy. My advice to anybody is find that thing that you really, really love to do and do it. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you've got to pick your hobby and make it a profession, because then it ceases to be a hobby. And there's quite a blurry line. My son studied music technology, and he's one of these really annoying people that can pick up 2 bits of wood and make a tune out of it. Whereas I can't. I could have hundreds of hours of lessons or something like that. So but he came back from university and said, I don't want to do that anymore, because I've realized if I do that, I'm going to be indoors, and I've discovered a love of the outdoors.
Interesting.
So
fascinating.
So just find something that you love and do it.
Brilliant. Jeremy, thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure.
I really appreciate it. It's a great first episode for this new series, and I think there's actually a lot of life lessons and thoughts you put in here which a lot of people can take away regardless of if they're in golf or not. There's a lot of things you said which really made me consider how I see myself and my approach to work and that kind of thing. So thank you so much for that. And
pleasure.
It's been great. So thank you.
Good.
Cheers.
Okay.
Thank you so much for listening to the Valley of Outlaws podcast. If you enjoyed it, please do share it with friends and family, and please see all of our news across our socials